Welcome to the Superintendent's Hangout, where we discuss topics in education, charter schools, life in general, and not necessarily in that order. I'm your host, Dr. Sharetta. Come on in and hang out. In this episode, I was privileged and honored to sit down with Felicia Rangel-Samponaro virtually via Zoom. Felicia is one of the founders of the Sidewalk School, which is an NGO, a non-governmental organization focusing on providing education to asylum-seeking families and children at the U.S.-Mexico border. In this wide-ranging interview and conversation, Felicia and I spoke about curricular design, the decision to have teachers who are qualified teachers and also asylum seekers themselves teach the students at the Sidewalk School, the role of racism and the challenges that Felicia and others have faced in that regard, the role of government policies, government action, or government inaction, as the case may be, the federal government, the U.S. government's app that all asylum seekers are mandated to use to make their appointments, and the challenges, the systemic challenges and obstacles that are inherent within that app, and much, much more. I hope that our listeners will check out the show notes, click on the links provided, consider donating to this wonderful and transformative NGO. I also hope that you enjoy this episode and will spread the word. Welcome, Felicia. Thank you for coming in and hanging out with us for a little bit today and sharing your story.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I was wondering if you could start there with your origin story. History matters, and I think it'd be important for our listeners to understand where your path comes from and what's led you to the present moment, and anything you'd like to share about your work and Sidewalk School and anything else.
I guess, so we could start with, I used to be a housewife for 9 years before I started this work. I do have a child. And this work caught my interest because I do live on the border. Mexico is across the street from where I live. And down here on our news networks, what was happening during Trump's administration was constantly running on our TVs in this area. And it started out with metering. And it was really hard to see children and families living on a bridge with no food, no water, and had no idea when they would be able to cross. They were just kept on a bridge under a carport. And that was really hard for me to see as a mom and as just a person. And so I started crossing with other groups of people, other volunteers. We didn't know each other. We found each other on Facebook. And we started crossing and delivering dinner and blankets and coffee and water to these families. At that time, it was maybe 25 people, believe it or not, because as you know, today it's thousands of people that live in encampments. But at that time, it was like 25 or less that lived there. That's how I started personally. How I met the other director of the Sidewalk School, Victor Cavazos, was he was one of the people in that group that I found on Facebook. Was volunteering his time. At the time, he is also a father, but he also worked for a company, IT. He wasn't doing anything close to this. And it just struck his heart as well. And he and I met on a bridge that night in Matamoros serving asylum seekers. And then from there, as metering turned into migrant protection protocols, as people were stuck in Mexico for years, as we watched 25 people turn into almost 5,000 people, we decided to start the Sidewalk School. That was back in 2019. But that's how the school started.
What can you explain what metering is for folks who may not know?
It is when you decide a certain number of people can cross into the U.S. every day. That is what metering is, and how it was worked out on the bridge. It was in Mexico, it was left up to Mexican officials to keep a list of people and decide how many got to go that day. There's a lot of corruption involved in that, as you can imagine, especially with no oversight from either government, because this was all new for them as well under Trump's administration. Now, they use CBP One app to meter every day. So it's different now.
And we'll, in a minute, I'll get to, I want to hear more about the specifics of the Sidewalk School and kind of how it was built and what it looks like today. But Title 42, that's something that, I think the nation was hearing about, depending on where folks get their news from. It was either going to cause a run at the border. It was going to solve all the problems when it went away. It wasn't going to solve all the problems when it went away. Can you share how the sunsetting of Title 42 impacted the work you do in your life, and how that looks where the rubber meets the road, so to speak?
So let me say how we got there, and it's really short. After Trump lost the election and Biden won, people made the mistake of thinking that these encampments at the border, it was done, it was over. And all of the NGOs, including the Sidewalk School, we got zero donations, zero funding. And little did people know, when the Matamoros encampment closed, the original one, because now there's a new one. But when the original Matamoros encampment closed, a new encampment in Reynosa opened up. And at one point, those two encampments overlapped. As one was ending, the other one was just beginning. So the very last day of the Matamoros encampment for Victor Cavazos and I, the next day, we were in Reynosa watching a brand new encampment get formed. The Reynosa encampment held about 2,000 people. Under Biden's administration, he took away migrant protection protocols, but in its place put new laws and policies that also made it difficult for people to legally cross into the country. The Reynosa encampment was huge on a very small piece of land, nothing like the original Matamoros encampment that stretched miles. They were jamming thousands of people on top of each other. And this is during the pandemic. So at night, you would hear just hundreds and thousands of people coughing, trying to breathe at night inside of the Reynosa encampment. Title 42 is something under Biden. And so I compare the two administrations. I know a lot of immigration lawyers don't like to hear that, but I've seen it when no one crosses, like under Trump. People were dying inside of that encampment from cancer, from infections, from just tons of things. He would let them die there. To under Biden, where under Title 42, he would give you an exception. If you were dying, he would let you come into the US and get medical care so you can live, or your baby could live, or your toddler could live. So there are a lot of pros and cons to all of it. But I've told many people I would vote for Biden again over a Republican president, because I've seen what they do. And something's better than nothing.
So when these encampments come together, you just described a big geographic area and a camp kind of being shut down and then morphing into another one. These are kind of being created almost organically, correct? They're not really directed by any authority in Mexico. There's just people who are desperate and they're moving to another spot, correct?
That is correct. All of these encampments, the original Reynosa encampment was taken down one night. And when they took down the original encampment, they thought, oh, it's over. Now we have our property back here in Mexico. What happened was it created 5 new encampments. Ran from 1 to 5. No one thought about that. When you displace thousands of people and there are no shelters or shelter space, where do you expect people to go? So groups of people went into 5 different places, and then we have 5 brand new encampments in Reynosa which made our work harder because then we had to drive around to all of the encampments. But yes, all of this is organic. There are no international organizations that come in that's to set guidelines, to provide safety, security. We don't have any of that in our region. When I say our region, I mean Matamoros and Reynosa. These encampments are wide open for anyone just to come in and do whatever they like, because international organizations refuse to step in and assist us. So you have little bitty NGOs like the Sidewalk School, which no one ever heard of, ever. And I don't expect you to ever hear of us. But you have a little bitty NGO that started out solely as a school, and we used to literally teach on the sidewalk. We built a shelter. Our shelter is called Kaleo. It's in Reynosa. It's meant for children and their families. We have a clinic now in Reynosa. We have a clinic in Matamoros. We have a building in Matamoros. We have morphed into this big thing that we never thought we would be. And we've had to learn all of these new skills just to help thousands of people every day, because there are not a lot of NGOs doing the work that we do, and national, international NGOs refuse to come into our cities to help us because they say it's too dangerous.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that, about the danger, the perception of danger? I saw YouTube videos where you talked about how dangerous Reynosa is, and what does that look like on a daily basis, and why might it be dissuading other aid organizations and support organizations from wanting to work there?
Let me say, whenever I hear these international organizations who refuse to come to Mexico because of the danger, yet they go into Ukraine or other war zones, I would like Americans to think about that. If this international organization is brave enough to go into a war zone, but is too scared to go into Mexico, into border towns, yet we're okay with leaving thousands of people in these border towns, what does that mean? So it's not safe for any American to go to. Actually, we're not supposed to be going. It's on like red alert, I think, for us Americans. That's how dangerous Mexico is. But it's okay for us to leave thousands of families, babies, and kids out there to wait for a CBP-1 appointment. It makes no sense. Somehow our US government figured out within 3 to 6 months to how to let in thousands of Ukrainians into the United States legally and orderly. That's their favorite word, an orderly fashion. We somehow figured it out for this one nationality of people, but we couldn't figure this out for Haitians. We couldn't figure this out for Hondurans. The Sidewalk School, this is our 5th year. And our US government still hasn't figured it out for minorities, but we have figured it out for Ukrainians. It lets me know that there is a solution because they already came up with one for the Ukrainians. So now if they could just move it on down to people of other nationalities in other countries, then my job will be gone. My job will be irrelevant. And hopefully one day it will be. I don't want to always spend my life working in US-made encampments.
So you've described a situation where it grew from a very organic school on the sidewalk, literally, to now shelters and clinics, et cetera. Talk to us a little bit about how the school portion works. As I understand it, your teachers are asylum seekers themselves, largely, all supported by donations. So later on, we'll talk about how folks can support your great work. How do you conceive of and nourish a school with such a high level of transience, right? Because I'd imagine that both the children and the adults are constantly in flux. Talk to us about that.
So that is very true. Race does have a lot to deal with this. There are no white asylum seekers in any of these encampments. And almost the 5 years I've worked in 11 encampments now in my region. No white people. All of these asylum seekers are brown and Black people. And that's something else Americans need to know. So your next question should be, why are there no white asylum seekers? And that's because they're getting into our country and they don't have an issue the same way minorities have the issue. Minorities are stuck in Mexico for years compared to white asylum seekers. But back to school. The Sidewalk School, one of the main reasons we started was because a lot of our volunteers are white. And what was happening, what I was seeing, what Victor was seeing, whenever the little kids who are all minorities were seeing a white person come, they would all get like really happy and excited and like, oh, you've come to save me. And they would literally use those words. Mm. And that's very hurtful. And so we did only hire asylum seekers, and it was asylum seekers living in their community and their camps with them. The teachers all had degrees. They were all had training. They were all professionals. And so because it was important for the kids to also get excited when they see brown and black people coming.
Yeah.
That's really important for kids to see that. And also they need to see their teachers as leaders, and they need to see their teachers giving out donations to the other people in their community, not just a white face doing that. Right. So the Sidewalk School started, that was one of actually the main reasons we started, because I wanted the kids to be excited when they saw a brown face too. But also it gave, so the teachers, they don't work for free. And it's not sustainable to expect people to live off a donation for years, especially under MPP. That lasted 2 years. We watched the kids grow up during that time. And so the teachers were getting paid. So they no longer had to wait for anyone to come and give them anything. They were able to then move to apartments to eat. They were able to go out. We were just trying to give back in a community where we are the foreigners in. And that's something else I don't think people think about. We are the guests in this country, and we are the guests in these communities. Mm-hmm. Therefore, Victor and I should not be in the forefront telling people what to do and how this goes. No, you need to put the people in the community in the forefront and let them lead and tell me and Victor, this is how it goes. And then we could talk about it, because I was a registered teacher in the state of Texas. I have a degree in psychology. So it was one thing that the kids were trying to come to the U.S., and I wanted to give them a taste of U.S. education as they lived in the encampment. But it's another thing coming from within their own community and what they're used to seeing and hearing and doing. It had to be a mixture of both for the kids to actually learn something from it. So it's a balance that we play for years now.
It's actually one of the things that really caught my attention, because it's one thing that we wrestle with. For example, in my role in California, I wrestle with that all the time, is to try to have teachers and staff who look like and come from the backgrounds of students. Schools all over America, that's not the case. The profile of teachers, as you know, is socioeconomically often very different from their students, and racially and ethnically and linguistically, and I could go down the whole list. And so if you do, I think that was something that was very, really struck me about the design that you have. It's whether it was somewhat by kind of default or by design, or kind of a natural way that a community would support itself, to have teachers who better to teach kids than someone who's educated and trained. And I was very inspired listening to I think he's I'm going to forget the name, but a Cuban teacher who was in one of the YouTube videos, and I was like, this is awesome, and he's talking about the needs of the kids, and so like he gets where they came from, and to me that was a very, very beautiful piece.
Yeah, Ray is actually still one of my really, really good friends. We talked yesterday. But Ray, Rodney, yes, that's the original Sidewalk School staff, actually. This is the other thing. I've spoken to an American school that has taken in children asylum seekers after they've crossed into the US and started in a public school. And she was telling me how the teachers have all these issues, but these are American teachers.
Yeah.
So, right. So if you're getting someone from their community to teach them, they understand what happened to them in these encampments. And I'm not saying run out and hire someone who used to live in an encampment, but you could. We had tons of teachers that lived in that camp. We have teachers now that live in the Matamoros encampment. They are qualified, they're trained, they can do it. And it would be more helpful to the student because there is so much damage being done to them on a daily basis that what an American would consider to be troublesome or acting out or something, it's really not. That's not what's going on at all. Like in the Sidewalk School Matamoros, we have a calm corner. We have a calm corner, we have a feeling stick, and we have a feeling tree. And all of those are used all the time because the children do need to take breaks and they do need to get out what is happening to them inside that encampment. If you can imagine about 3,000 or 4,000 people living in an RV park, all in tents with no bathrooms, no food, no water, just like jammed together, surrounded by dirt. A lot of things happen to these children and to the adults. It happens if you live in a encampment, things are happening to you, just I promise. So when you put them in a school environment, especially a US school, and you expect them to sit there for 8 hours and take in all this information you're trying to give them, I'm going to tell you that's not going to happen, especially if they just cross. It's not. Nonetheless, you're also providing some therapy, some emotional support, a counselor, because this child needs to get out a lot of stuff. So when this American school contacted me, it was the principal. She was actually just asking me what I thought was going on. And I told her what I'm telling you. They need emotional support. They're not going to do great their first year. They need to get past so many things. Also, when they're in these encampments, Mexico isn't providing school to them. The US government is not providing school to them. The Sidewalk School is who's providing school to them. And I can't force them to come every day. So sometimes I see them, sometimes I don't. So in this time, from the time they left their home country and finally made it into the US and finally sat down in your classroom, they were probably out of school for about a year, maybe more. And you're expecting them to do these things. And as American teachers, we're not taught about this, much less I'm not being asked to speak at different schools about my experience running a school in these encampments. No one asked me to do that. I would love to. I think teachers should know, especially if you work in a school where these children are coming to, you need to know what's happening to them.
That would seem like a fairly sensible thing for a principal in Texas to do, right? Send you a message and say, hey, can you come to, I don't know, whatever city, can you come and talk to my teachers and at a staff meeting, or can you make a video? And like, to me, that doesn't seem like a bridge too far, right? But as you mentioned previous, it's just a matter of, is this a priority for folks or not?
Yeah.
In the US. You were talking about the Mexican government and the US government and how kind of neither one is providing school and perhaps other services. What is your relationship? What is the Sidewalk School's relationship to government entities? I guess on both sides of the border in terms of the work you're doing.
So people have asked, what does NGO stand for? So we're a non-governmental organization. With that being said, we try not to get caught up in the politics, which is an impossible thing to do. Right. But even in interviews such as this one, I don't ever say if I'm left or if I'm right, because we get donations from both sides. Believe it or not, people all over the world, regardless of their political party, care what's happening to people out in these encampments. But we do try our best to stay out of the politics game.
Apart from the politics piece, is there I guess what I'm wondering is, how do you interact with local authorities on both sides? Or is it kind of like I believe that humans are genuinely inherently fairly nice and are like, hey, someone's helping young kids. And whether the system hasn't figured out a way to help kids as individuals, I think it's a pretty universal sentiment that young children need support. So maybe, hey, there's this former Texas housewife who's like leading this charge with other staff members, and we're just going to have, hey, here you go. Has that kind of been the sentiment?
When it comes to children, yes, both sides of the border are usually kind about that aspect of it. Under Biden, under Trump, there was no leeway. He gave no leeway to anyone. Under Biden, he does give some leeway when it comes to children. The Mexican government also, I mean, overall, when it comes to the school aspect, we are treated very kindly on both sides because they don't want kids out there starving or dying, or, they don't want that. And we do provide education, but most importantly, we provide food. We give them breakfast, we give them lunch. We always fill up the water tanks in the school, so they always have access to clean water. We have a shower on our second floor. Like, we provide basic necessities as us Americans would view it. To them, it's a luxury that we're providing. So both sides of the government understand what we do in both cities. And when it comes to that, yes, they're kind about it.
What do you think are the biggest misperceptions of the work you do, and I should say misperceptions that the public might have about the work you do and what these children and families, who they are as humans, right? I mean, I think there's been rhetoric for the past years about undesirable people coming to the U.S. and so talk to us about your experiences with families, and what should the public really know about the families you serve?
The biggest misconception is an invasion at the border. And because if that was true, we wouldn't have all of these encampments in both cities. So we have these encampments because people are waiting to legally cross. The other huge misconception, or something I don't know if people actually think about, is people aren't just leaving their home country just to come to the US just because it's like the cool thing to do. People are leaving behind their families, their moms, their dads, their friends, their house, their childhood homes. That's a hard thing for anyone to do. And you do that when you are scared for your life. That's when you do that. So I don't know. It's just something, it always surprises me when people don't think about that. Like, you don't take your child and travel halfway across the world on foot with a backpack, and that's all you got, just because I want to go to a different country. No sane thinking person would do that, much less thousands upon thousands of people. People do that because they're running for their lives.
The New York Times just, I think it was today, had an article on the Darien gap. Right. And I'm sure a lot of the families who you work with have certainly, if they came from South America, they came through there. And if they're from African nations, et cetera, they very likely might have landed in South America and come through. And I just was astounded, like, when you really focus on the volume of people coming through there, that it's just turned into, as you say, like big encampments. And there's a cottage industry of people who drive the boats, and there's people who sell the packaged food to people, and there's a people who rent tents, and it's massive. And so, as you say, those are probably the precursors, I'd imagine, of eventually of the families that reach the northern stretches of Mexico and end up in Reynosa, for example.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of our families come through the Darien Gap. And as you know, a lot of people die in the Darien. It is a very dangerous place. Even though it has more foot traffic now, people often drown in the river. We come across families where one parent survived and the other parent didn't. And luckily they saved the child or the children, but they watched the other parent drown in the Darien Gap. Those are common stories for families. Are they drowned in the Rio Grande River? Like, we hear all types of things from these families as the surviving parent is trying to move on, and as the child is really confused about what is happening, how we got here, where is my other parent. We've seen all of it. And we try to provide normalcy and comfort through school to these children who are going to have to process all of this. And then they end up in an American school where sometimes the American teachers don't know how to handle that situation, because the American teachers probably don't know, like, this is what all this child had to go through, and now they're sitting here. And now I'm asking them to learn something from me. So it's a lot. I wish the system was definitely different. And I wish American schools did have something for children asylum seekers, because they definitely need something to help them in school so they can be successful in the end, because that's always the goal, to make them successful.
Have you had to become an expert in the CBP One app? I know that, like, from our neck of the woods here in San Diego, Tijuana region, lots of news stories about the app not working or being delayed, and people kind of desperately trying to log on. How has that been with you working with the families?
So yes, the Sidewalk School, we did have to become experts at the CBP One app. We were the tech support in our region, Matamoros and Reynosa. The Sidewalk School staff used to go out into the encampments. I used to send them out in groups to help the families use the app. We also provide internet in Matamoros and Reynosa, because that's something else people don't think about. We are requiring thousands of people to use the app, but yet we do not offer free internet. Internet along the border in our region is sketchy. It is not a solid connection. The Sidewalk School bought 2 Starlinks. We put one up in our shelter in Reynosa. We put another one up in a shelter in Matamoros, and gave out the password to everybody. Wow. We pay for that every single month, because people need to have a fair shot at getting this appointment in the CBP One app. We have asked both governments to pay for the internet in our region, because, I mean, as you've already heard, we run a clinic, a school, a shelter, and now we're paying for internet. Like, we don't get a lot of money. We don't at all. Both sides of the government said no, that they would not pay for it. So we are one of the organizations. I believe 2 more organizations are now paying for internet in both cities, but we were the first ones just to come out and pay for it outright, because we saw people who could not afford internet could never get an appointment. Also, if you didn't have a newer version of a smartphone, you can't get an appointment. I mean, we saw so many issues with that. And then in the beginning, if you were my skin color, I am brown, or Black, your picture was not being accepted. We saw so many issues with this app, and it continues to have a lot of issues, even as we speak today, even with all the updates to it.
You mean
that?
Sorry to interrupt you. Just for clarification, so even just the uploading of the photo, the system wasn't accepting it.
No. And if anyone ever gets bored, you can go back on my Twitter account, the Sidewalk School, because I was very vocal about the racism in the beginning when the app was first released. It was meant for white asylum seekers and people of fair skin tones. It was not meant for people like me or anyone darker than me. The app it's been updated, but once again, it's meant for people who have resources to afford these smartphones. And to be honest, in the beginning, it was meant for people who had iPhones.
Right.
And as an American, we think everyone has an iPhone, but iPhones are only popular in our country. Other countries use Androids. So 90% of the asylum seekers coming to our border all had these Android phones, but this app was meant for an iPhone. I mean, it's one issue after the other. with the app. Also, there's no map on it, which means we are expecting people who are not from Mexico to know the geography of Mexico and know where all of these ports are as you try to make an appointment. Me as an American that has the luxury of sitting here with time on my side, I don't know the geography of Mexico. So I don't know why someone from Haiti would know it. I don't know why someone from Guatemala would know it. But in that app, if you click in it today, there is no map. They just list ports. You pick it. If you get an appointment there, you then have to figure out where that port is. And then your next thought is, how will I get there?
Yeah, I went on just kind of curiously looking on social media and looking at comments about the app, and I know even just using a similar interface with the federal government over even something like a passport card or the Century card that we have here, even that for someone who reads English and, again, as you say, has time on my hands and has stable internet, sometimes I'm just perplexed by how does this work? It has multiple layers of authentication. You need to get text messages, passwords, and code words. And I'm like, this is strange for an entity that is being supported by taxpayers. So it's an interesting journey. Where do you get your inspiration and your resilience? Because when you talk about, you started off today by saying, "Yeah, I'm a former housewife," and I'd imagine that your life has changed in dramatic ways since you saw the plight of people on the bridge during metering, and then that's what 4 or 5 years ago, and then to the present. How do you keep going?
People ask me that. I mean, there's different, I have personal reasons for why I keep going. And then there is something about once you start doing this, and I guess at the level. So when we first started, let me also say we're the only minority or Black NGO in this region. And along the border, there's only two. It's me and Gerline Joseph, the Haitian Bridge Alliance. We're the only two Black people that do this job. That's it. So let me say, starting out, no one was trying to give this Black woman money. And no one was trying to give Victor Cavazos, who is indigenous, money either. Our colleagues are white. And I had to use my entire life savings the first year, 2 years. That it was all my own money because no one was giving us anything.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to be in that position because I know a lot of people who look like me who can't be out of work for 2 years and not get paid, who had a retirement fund.
Yeah.
Very fortunate for that. And I don't regret how I used my money. I would do it all again. But so on the American side, and now working on the Mexico side for a couple of years now, it was hurtful, really hurtful to me in the beginning that racism, like it sits up front in this line of work. Like it sits right next to me.
On both sides, correct? On both sides of the border.
On both sides of the border. Like racism is like right there staring at me every single day. And in the beginning, that was a really hard thing for me to push through and kind of push past because like we needed to do this thing over here. And then so this is for our country. Oftentimes people don't know especially if you're not a minority,
right? When
racism is happening or microaggressions or any of it, they are very unaware it's happening. Usually, obviously I can recognize it, I'm Black. So in this job, it does sit in the forefront, the racism. And I'm always surprised whenever people try to say, like, this is all asylum seekers. We don't want any asylum seeker in this country. But that's not true, because when the Ukrainian war started, they let in like 20 or 30,000 over a month or 2 month span. It was not only were we letting in people from Ukraine into our country, we were also giving them work permits. We were allowing them to walk across our borders. Ukrainians used to walk past our encampments full of brown and black people and just cross into the US. It is very different depending on your race, how you're treated coming into our country. That is a hard thing to see and watch. I am Black and I am Mexican. I am both.
Right.
So it's my people all the way around. Like every one of these camps are my people. I don't know. I mean, we would have to, it's a long discussion just about working in this environment. The Sidewalk School, like, we didn't get funding for the longest time. We were often left out, whereas our colleagues would get hundreds and thousands of dollars and we wouldn't get one. And oftentimes, and even sometimes to this day, a reporter will ask me, like, what makes me qualified? But you're not asking my white colleague over there who just finished high school but runs an NGO, whereas I have a degree and I had a certification. It's just differences all the way around. I had another reporter ask me, why do I think Black people don't come out to the border to help? She was white. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, Black people can't go without getting paid for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, our society doesn't build up that way for brown and Black people. We don't have generational wealth where you can just go out to this border and give your money away like that. If Black and brown people had generational wealth, you would see more of them out here on the border. Of course they care about their people. Of course brown people care about their people. But we don't have that. There's a reason why you see majority white volunteers and most of the NGOs are ran by white people. That talks a lot about the US. I often tell people, like, we go on for a long time about race. Race in this line of work, it's just the questions that have been asked to me over the years. It just, I don't know, it just kind of blows my mind sometimes. It just does.
What's your greatest need right now at the Sidewalk School? People listening to this, some of whom may know somewhat about the topic, but it's unlikely that they know a lot. So this has been great to kind of get a crash course. And I know this is just a tiny little dipstick of like just a little experience, but how can people who do have kind hearts and are looking to do something, how can they help?
I would say, first, don't try to come to the encampments.
Right. I was going to ask you about that, so I'm glad you said that.
Yes. Oftentimes we get people who want to come down here and it's not possible and it's not safe.
Right.
The main thing is it's not safe. And it's not possible because there are not a lot of American NGOs, at least in the region I'm in, Matamoros and Reynosa. There are not a lot of us. And the very few of us that are on the ground, we are working constantly. So we can't have volunteers to show around or protect or because I don't have staff and I don't have money for that. But if you want to donate money, that is always great because it's easier for us to buy things on the Mexico side because usually it's cheaper, especially food is cheaper on that side than it is the US side. And when you do donate, or let's say buy food on the US side and send it to me, I'm gonna take it, thank you very much. But also know that we get taxed. They tax us once we cross into Mexico with it. We have to tell them how much it costs, and then they tell us how much we have to pay them, and then they let us go. But we're always asking for school supplies. Right now, the Matamoros encampment has over 1,000, under 2,000 people, but it grows every single day. all of the shelters in Matamoros are full. There is a new shelter that the Sidewalk School does support. That's where our Starlink is. It's actually inside of the new shelter. But please donate food to the new shelter. And then in Reynosa, if you would like to donate to Kaleo, please do. That's the Sidewalk School shelter as well. And we still have a school there as well. We have 2 schools in Reynosa. So I'm school supplies, please donate to us. And if you don't want to donate to the Sidewalk School, there are other American NGOs. I'm more than happy to direct you to them or to our Mexico partners. It does not have to be to us.
And I noticed that you have an Amazon wish list as well. That's got school supplies on there, some food items. I think I saw tents. There's tents on there, and should people just go and just select, kind of, go through that list, or any priorities? I mean, you said the books and the food.
Food is always a priority, and school supplies we never have enough of. And I'll tell you why. Under Trump, when it was MPP, we watched those kids grow up. We spent 2 years with them. So, and at that time, the Sidewalk School, they were progressing like from one grade to the next. We actually did report cards and progress reports during that time. It was under Biden's administration when it became more fluid, and the students kept changing and the teachers kept changing. We still do have teachers who used to be asylum seekers that work for us to this day. But yes, our entire staff has changed. So the teachers who work for us today, they have now decided to seek asylum in Mexico. They no longer want to cross into the US. And so the kids, because of the CBP1 app, sometimes I'll have you for 2 weeks. Sometimes I'll have you for 8 months.
Right.
But it is a steady flow of children. So our school, we give out stuff because of COVID. The pandemic really changed a lot of stuff. Like you couldn't check out books from us anymore. So now we have to give you the book. And so we're still kind of in that phase of we'll just give it to you so no one can get sick. But so we're always in need of school supplies like paint, finger paints, construction paper. Believe it or not, construction paper is super expensive in Mexico, like really, really expensive. So construction paper, scissors, pencil sharpeners, those are the things that we are constantly out of, constantly. So if anyone would like to donate that to all of our schools or just one of the schools, that would be great. But if you just want to donate to our clinics, the Sidewalk School clinics are actually ran by American doctors. Our clinics are virtual, so our doctors are able to get into these cities, whereas before they couldn't. But our nurses are nurses who are registered nurses in Mexico. They're physically in the clinics while the doctor is on the laptop. So, and medications we give out are free because we know since you live in an encampment, you're not going to be able to afford the medication. So we give that out. Our clinics are the most expensive thing that we run. It's even more expensive than our shelter because the medications cost us so much. So if anyone would like to donate to our clinics, please, please do. You'll be saving people's lives.
I'm thank you for that. I'm going to put, for the listeners, I'll put the links in the show notes so that with more information and the links to donate as well, so we can if for people who are interested in helping. What are your long-term goals for the Sidewalk School? Before you answer that, one of the things that you said that really touched me was when you said that it was really important for you to have teachers who had had the same lived experience as the students, because then this wasn't kind of like a white savior coming to the camp. And so how does that fit into the long-term goals for the Sidewalk School? I mean, I'd imagine you'd like to see a time when your work isn't necessary anymore, right? But we also have to be, I don't know when that time will come ever, right? So what are the long-term goals as you continue to grow your organization?
So something that we never talk about, and we should, is that we have a school in Africa inside the Zaleka encampment, Malawi. We started that school a year ago, or a little over a year ago now.
Hmm.
The goal for the Sidewalk School at one point, before the encampments continued in our region, Victor and I, we were going to take it to other countries and put it inside encampments where education was not easily accessible. But once Reynosa encampment started, the original one, and as you know, it's continued on to many more encampments since, we stayed. We didn't leave. And we let the Sidewalk School, we partnered with another NGO called ROC. And ROC provides free university classes for people inside the Zaleka encampment. And we told them, run it. Run it, we'll help finance it because we care very deeply about it. That's why we started it. And we were like, once this ends, we're going to come back to you and we're going to go to Africa and we're going to really invest our time in the Sidewalk School, Zaleka. Well, as you know, a new Madam Morris encampment started late last year. So this is our 11th encampment with the two cities. And so I don't know when this is going to end. I don't. And another election's coming up. Depending on who wins is going to depend on what these encampments will look like after that election, whether or not they'll grow again to 5 or more encampments or back down to 1 encampment. I'm just surprised more. This is, I think, our 5th year. And most Americans aren't even aware that all of these encampments are like right across the street from these American cities. From Brownsville to Matamoros, once you cross the bridge, look over to your left, there's a huge encampment. In Reynosa, once you cross the Hidalgo Bridge, look over to your right. And these are U.S. made encampments because these are people who are trying to become U.S. citizens. So anyone who says this is not a U.S. made encampment is incorrect. These are U.S. encampments.
You've been very generous with your time. I'd imagine your work schedule is non-traditional and kind of never-ending. But my last question, let's say this is kind of a thought experiment. If you had the opportunity to create a billboard for the side of the freeway that people drive by every day, maybe it's the international border that has thousands and thousands of passengers back and forth walking and driving, whatever. What would your billboard say, or what would the Sidewalk School's billboard say about your work to the world?
Let me tell you what I told Nickelodeon, because we just did an interview with Nickelodeon.
And they're way cooler than me, so we'll go with that.
Well, because they asked, like, what would you tell children? And then they asked me, what would you tell an adult?
Right.
Right. And so for the adults, I told them I would tell the parents they need to vote. But before you vote, I want you to go and learn about the other countries where these asylum seekers are coming from. I want you to learn about Haiti and how it was devastated by an earthquake twice, how their president was assassinated in his home. I want you to learn about Honduras, how natural disaster devastated their country. What was that, 3 or 4 years ago, and just leveled that place out. I believe if people knew what was happening in these other countries, they would be more understanding about why they're coming to the US. Also, I also believe that most people just don't know what is really happening in these other countries, because then some of these comments that I hear wouldn't be said. But after you learn about other countries, vote. I would tell the parents to vote. And then when it comes to children, when you see a new student at your school, maybe they don't speak English, say hi, ask them to sit with you, teach them English. It means a lot to these students when someone thinks about them. We are partnered with the Butterfly Effect, and that's an NGO ran by 2 young women. They're now 15, but I met them when they were 10. And they have taught inside of the Reynosa and the Matamoros schools. They still teach in one of our schools. These young ladies now, they send bracelets sometimes, but they teach our students how to make butterflies, and they take the butterflies and they exhibit them all over our country. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but you should look. It's pretty cool.
A butterfly effect.
Yeah. But so the butterflies you're seeing, whenever our students finish them, I ship them to their mom here on the US side. So some of those butterflies were actually made inside of these encampments by our students. Whenever these kids see, their names are Lily and Kaya, they get so excited because they're like, oh, this American girl is thinking of me. And it's like, yeah, she's thinking of you. So if you see a new student, say hi, sit with them, teach them English if they want to learn it. I've seen our students cry when Lily and Kaya like sent them friendship bracelets. Like it just broke their heart. Not broke it, but like it just touched them. But that's what I would tell a kid. The fact that we see all of this firsthand it's hurtful. It's hurtful. But the fact that Americans don't know about it is surprising. Because our government's the one doing it.
Well, I really thank you, Felicia, for your time and your candor and your passion. And to the listeners, please check out the show notes and consider donating and at the very least, consider learning more and becoming educated, as Felicia says, about both for voting purposes, but also just for human purposes to know what's going on in the world. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Superintendent's Hangout. You can follow me on Twitter at DVS1970. Please be sure to share this show with friends and family on social media and in the real world. Thank you to Brad Bacayal for editing and production assistance, and to Tina Royster for scheduling and logistics. Thanks for hanging out, and have a great day.